In this last video for the inverses in composition, we'll look at reciprocal functions and then also problems that will require to draw triangles. So for cosecant and secant, take the reciprocal of the ratio and then use the reciprocal function to finish the problem. Cotangent, you're going to evaluate on its own since it doesn't have the same principal values as tangent. Okay, so cosecant of the inverse of 2 root 3 over 3 is going to be the same as sine inverse of root 3 over 2. And if you need help in flipping that, you would do it off to the side, 3 over 2 root 3, rationalize it. And you would get that root 3 over 2. I'm not going to show that for the next one, but that is something that you can do. So you're taking the reciprocal, and then sine inverse of root 3 over 2. Your quadrants are either 1 or 4 for the principal values. We're going with 1 because it's positive, and 60 degrees. Now it doesn't specify radians or degrees, so you can put either one. So if you put pi over 3 for that, that would also be fine. I'm going to do the secant one next because it's the same idea, and then go back to the cotangent. So secant goes with cosine inverse of, take the reciprocal of negative 2 will give us negative 1/2. Cosine is negative in the second quadrant for the principal values. And the reference angle for this is 60 degrees. So if we do 180 minus 60 for that quadrant, we're going to get 120. Or 2 pi over 3 if you decided to go with radians. Now, in order to come up with your value for your next one to help you with the reference angle, what you're probably going to want to think about is tangent inverse of the reciprocal of that. So tangent inverse, that would be root 3 instead of root 3 over 3. Just to get the reference angle would be 60 degrees. I just realized I did all of these as 60-degree reference angles. That was not intentional. And then for cotangent for negative, so this is just helping us out figuring out the reference angle, doing the reciprocal part. So you can still do the reciprocal part for the reference angle, but then cotangent's principal values are first or second. So for negative, we're going to do second quadrant, and we're going to do 180 minus 60 again to give us 120. So you don't want to do this problem completely by switching to tangent, because if I did it with tangent inverse of negative root 3, I would get an answer of negative 60, because they have different principal values. So that's a little bit tricky, but just something to be careful with. Okay, and our last type of question will involve using triangles. And technically, you probably could use triangles for a lot of these questions. And I am just going to do a blank page here because I don't have the copies of that. So for the triangle composition, you have for number 14, tangent of sine inverse negative 1/3. So the goal with this, in terms of using the principal values, you're going to draw a triangle. This is not a value we know, so you're going to draw the triangle in the correct quadrant based off of the principal values. And find the missing side. I mean, I think that's usually apparent when we are doing that. This will not involve a middle step for the composition. So before, and when you do composition problems, you have to show that middle step of what comes out in between. Here you won't need to, So we're going to use SOHCAHTOA, -1/3, opposite over hypotenuse, and then calculate the missing side. And then just make sure you simplify that. So if you do square root of 8, that would simplify to 2√2, which would be positive. So actually, I've been using SOHCAHTOA to come up with some of the other stuff. And then since tangent is opposite over adjacent, you would do -1/2√2, rationalize it, and get your final answer. So the middle step here is drawing the triangle. That's showing your work for this type of problem, whereas before you would just show the exact value answer. If you ever get stuck on an exact value one, I wouldn't recommend this because it would take a lot of time, but you could draw a triangle for those. Again, if you got stuck on a question. It would definitely take more time than it would if you had the values memorized and could impact you finishing a quiz or a test, but it is an option. All right, and we have one more, just to try one more of that type. Sorry about that. So 15 is cotangent of cosine inverse, -√3/3. So again, we're going to draw a triangle in the correct quadrant. We're looking at cosine. So cosine negative going to be in quadrant 2. So that's where we're going to draw the triangle. Not really doing a good job drawing these lines straight. And then this will be -√3/3. Calculate your missing side. So x is going to end up being square root of 6, and it's positive because it is facing up there. Cotangent is adjacent over opposite, which in this case will be -√3/√6. That simplifies to -1/√2. Do a little rationalizing. So again, no middle step in terms of writing out an angle measurement, but the triangle now ends up being your middle step. So make sure in your previous questions you're showing the middle step of either putting the angle in there or putting the ratio in, and showing those two steps in those previous problems. Okay, so now depending on when you completed these videos, if you're doing them for homework, then you will complete the practice in class the next day. If you did them in class, then you're doing the practice right after. Make sure you pay attention to the notes on the haiku block.